Hi everyone, welcome back to the Autonomous Brief Political Edition. I'm Synthia Cognita.
And I'm Felix Logis. Always great to be here with you, Synthia. Today we've got a lot to unpack, so let's dive right in.
Let's start with this fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hamas that went into effect recently. According to our article summaries, it was negotiated by both the Biden and Trump administrations. That's interesting. How are these two administrations working together on something like this?
It's a bit surreal, honestly. The article mentions that the deal is in phases, but it's already facing challenges due to internal Israeli political divisions and Hamas's refusal to relinquish power over Gaza. Plus, the Trump administration has been cozying up to Israel by rescinding Biden-era sanctions on Israeli settlers and lifting restrictions on arms supplies.
That does sound like a continuation of Trump's pro-Israel stance, even after leaving office. But what about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza? The article says the U.S. is mostly silent on that front. It seems like a dangerous balancing act, trying to keep peace while appeasing Israel and ignoring the bigger human rights issues.
It's also worth noting how this plays into Trump's broader strategy for the Middle East. He's been trying to position himself as a deal maker, even if it means walking a fine line with both Israel and Hamas. I wonder if this ceasefire will last beyond his political cycle.
Let's shift gears to something slightly lighter, but still fascinating. Google's stance on map name changes in the Gulf of Mexico and Denali. The article says Google won't update the names unless the U.S. government officially does so, following a Trump-era order to rename them.
Wow, so it's all about waiting for Washington to make the call. I can see why Google is being cautious here. Geographical naming can get messy. But honestly, it's kind of funny that they're holding off on updating their maps until the government acts.
It also raises questions about how other regions might be affected if similar orders come up. For example, would Trump-like policies in the future lead to renaming other geographical features? It feels like part of a larger effort to assert American cultural and political dominance globally. Speaking of Israel, we've got some interesting dynamics between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Biden. The article mentions that Netanyahu is stepping up settlement activity in Gaza while pushing for stricter restrictions on Palestinian movements.
That's a direct rebuke of the Biden administration's policies, which have been more even-handed in their approach to the conflict. It shows how much influence Trump still has over Netanyahu, even after leaving office.
It's also a reminder of how U.S. policy can swing depending on who is in power. Under Trump, we saw a lot of support for Israel without much criticism, but Biden seems to be taking a different approach. It'll be interesting to see if this creates any long-term shifts in the region. Now, let's take a break from geopolitics and dive into something cultural, a crossword puzzle. Our article mentions that a recent crossword referenced the Nickel Boys, a film about child labor exploitation in the early 20th century. That sounds like a pretty heavy topic for a puzzle. What's the story here?
It seems like the crossword was trying to make a statement or spark conversation, but it ended up causing some controversy. Critics argued that the puzzle trivialized the serious themes of the film. On one hand, it's creative. On the other hand, it feels like a missed opportunity for deeper engagement with such an important topic.
It also raises questions about how we use pop culture as a tool for education and awareness. Should media like crossword puzzles tackle heavy issues, or is there a risk of oversimplifying them? It's a tricky line to walk. Let's circle back to the Middle East and think about its broader role in global politics. We've got Israel, Gaza, and now even the US getting involved in map naming decisions. It feels like every issue in this region has international implications.
Absolutely. The article highlights how Trump's influence is still lingering, not just in Israel, but globally. His approach to foreign policy was very transactional, cutting deals and asserting dominance wherever possible. I wonder if future administrations will look back on that as a sustainable strategy or one that caused more problems than it solved.
It's also worth considering how younger leaders like Netanyahu are shaping the region's future. With the U.S. supporting them, there's a risk of entrenching certain policies that could have long-term consequences for peace and stability in the Middle East. As we wrap up today's show, it's clear that the Middle East remains one of the most complex and dynamic regions in the world. Whether it's ceasefires, map names, or cultural statements, every decision has ripple effects far beyond its borders.
That's definitely true. And as always, politics is personal. Whether we're talking about a crossword puzzle or a ceasefire deal, there are people and policies shaping these events in ways that aren't always visible to the outside world.
Thanks for joining us today, everyone. Stay tuned for more episodes of the Autonomous Brief Political Edition. Until next time, keep those conversations going